The key to successful betting is finding an edge. But to win, you also need to bet smart. Vince Accardi's Daily Sectionals can give you that professional advantage on thoroughbred racing. They provide invaluable sectional times to assess runners and find value in a market, whether you're backing or laying.
Hi, my name is Vince Accardi from Daily Sectionals, and today we're going to be discussing the power of using race speed profile and really bringing clarity to energy exertion and how this can be utilised to our advantage from a day-to-day point of view when we're doing our form.
Let's use the Group 3 Manfred Stakes as an example. Firstly, can you talk me through what the graphs and also the numbers mean below?
Yeah, so what we're looking at with the race speed profile is there's three areas here that we look at. We look at the early settling speed of this particular race. It's the first 400. We look at the mid section of the race. That's the second 400, between the 800 and the 400 metre mark. And then we look at the late closing speed of the graph. That's the last 400 metres for this particular race and a typical 1200 metre race. Then below the graphs, we can see we have some data there, which is in metres per second. To the left, we have 1 sec, which is the early settling speed. We have the 2 sec, which is the middle, and then we have the late closing speed, which is the 3 sec. To the right-hand side, we have the variations for each of the sections, the early, the middle, and the late, what the variances are between each and every runner. And then right at the end, we have the tan-coloured box, and that's the net sum total of each of those sections compiled together, giving us an overall plus or minus, and lastly, a final value of metres per second.
And so we're looking for horses that have got positive numbers in variance in the right-hand column?
Generally speaking, we are. If they've got a positive in the end box there, that's already an advantage.
And the blue dotted line, once we go back up to the graph, explain that to me.
The blue dotted line, the whole strategy around having that in place is that actually gives us what the average speed of this race is for this field of runners. So that blue line obviously can change if there's scratchings or not, but what this is designed to do, it's designed to give us insight. What is the average speed of this race? Who's going to be overexerting and who's going to be underexerting their energy?
So let's look at this in context of the race. Firstly, let's focus on winning chances and focus on Puritan and Golden Spin. Vince, take me through how you would interpret both of them in the first section.
In this case, Golden Spin, metres per second, 16.41. It's clearly the fastest runner through the first section and has several lengths advantage in terms of the natural early speed. Puritan, on the other hand, when we look very closely, it's almost right on the benchmark standard. So this is a very important point to articulate here, because what this allows us to understand is if the rider comes out and just rides Puritan at its natural race speed, this particular runner is going to not really overexert or underexert through the first section. On the other hand, Golden Spin, drawn a little bit wider, there is a possibility it could easily get to the front and may not exert too much overall energy because it has an advantage over the field.
So let's now have a look at the mid-race section, the 800 to the 400 metre mark.
When we're travelling at this speed between the 8 and the 400 and we're getting very close to the critical part of the race, it's important to understand what level of sustained speed you have, what's your momentum. In this case, when we look at Golden Spin, very strong through the middle section of the race. Also Puritan, he's building his speed. You can see benchmark through that first section and now starting to climb. In other words, what we're doing is as we're getting deeper in the race, this particular runner is actually getting stronger. And we want horses to be very, very strong and not having to overexert in the middle part to give themselves maximum opportunity when they come to the critical part of the last 400, the closing part of the race.
So now for the late closing section. What can you tell us about this?
As you can see, there's the average of the field, and we see a number of horses that are very, very strong closers. The challenge is, have they been able to get themselves in the optimum position to be able to exert their maximum capability late? How many times do we see the checks and the blocks that happen on the home turn, which can significantly impact their performance late? So if you've got a good smooth running transit and you haven't overexerted through those first two sections, you've got a high opportunity to really close out strongly. And from a betting point of view, it's so important to understand the relationship of how strong a horse is going to be able to close. There's no point in being a strong closer if you're going to give the competition 15 lengths head start. You're never going to catch them.
I know hindsight's a wonderful thing, but what would have been your betting strategy heading into this race on paper?
Ultimately, the runners that stood out first and foremost is I like to look at where's the favourite going to be early? Is that a positive or negative? I could see Golden Spin. He's got good speed early. There's a good chance he may not totally overexert. He's solid through the middle and late. Therefore, he becomes a prime positive target as being one of my betting plays. And then what I look for is I'm looking for the value runner that has solid profile through each of the sections. And Puritan was one of those runners that clearly demonstrated that. And therefore, again, when you look at the pricing structure of that horse, it made it very, very straightforward that you could have quite comfortably been in a position to play both those runners and make a handsome profit.
So can we do the same thing to find a good lay?
When we look at race speed profiles, the beauty of what we're looking at here is we're breaking the race down into 3 sections. Therefore, we've got to focus in those areas. The early settling speed, let's look at that firstly. Who's in the negative there? Tulsa and Ready for Victory are 2 examples here. Very, very slow early speed. When we look at the overall merit of this race, we can see that both these runners are going to have to exert a lot of energy to stay in touch. Then when we look at the middle section of the race, again, we see both those runners profiling below the blue line. In other words, what the average speed's going to be of this field. Therefore, more energy is required to exert. And most riders, they're going to want to put their runners into a position to try and close the race out. And unfortunately, both those runners coming into this race also profile very poorly late. Therefore, they become what I call big red flags and high probabilities for laying.
Into the straight, and Golden Spin, the leader from Tokyo Tycoon. Vostok is still following the leader along the inside, and then Tulsa and Puritan are starting to come home powerfully. Golden Spin in front, Puritan starting to whittle away at the margin. Golden Spin with 100 to go, Puritan getting level. Golden Spin by ahead, Puritan gets close. Puritan put his nose in front and won it. Puritan beat Golden Spin just on the wire, Ready for Victory, got up for third ahead of Vostok. Then came Sovereign Nation, topping up at a lot of ground. Palantino boxed on well from Bonorum, and then came Tulsa.
So that's a wrap from us. Vince, can you leave us with a pearl of wisdom?
Yes, well, my pearl's pretty simple. I love to look at the traditional speed map, which is all based on position and running. Doesn't give any real insight to what their natural running speed is. And then we can overlay it alongside a race speed profile, and we can have a lot of clarity on understanding where the horses are most likely over-exerting or under-exerting, purely and simply by just using the blue line.